If your day is organized until about 8:17 a.m., this episode is for you. Welcome to the organization episode. Welcome to Lies to Truth. I am your host, Pastor Mark Bedwell, and this is my wife.
My name is Kim Bedwell.
And today we're going to be talking about one of my least favorite subjects, organization.
How can that be your worst favorite subject?
Because I'm not very organized. I have an artistic mind. I'm not naturally organized, but I married a person who is. My wife, Kim, and she won't say this, of course, but she plays the role of pastor's wife, mom, CEO, trip planner for our church, and musical director, because we usually do a musical in the fall. And I said, hey, Kim, maybe you could give me some help on organization. And then by helping me, we can also help our listeners or people that watch. And so, of course, she sent me an outline because that's what organized people do. And so the topic tonight isn't really just about, oh, great, how can you be organized for success? The topic tonight really is about how can you be organized around life principles that you have pretty much ingrained in your life because of your worldview, your relationship with Christ, everything else. So, Kim, I believe the first place we need to start is you have, number one, to define success first. So, the question for me is before we get into calendars, what is success for us look like, people that are not organized?
That's exactly the right question to start with because, success is, there's so many different answers that could come. Depending on who you ask, what does success look like? You can get such a range of answers. The world is telling us one thing. Your boss may be telling you another thing.
Yeah.
Your family and children could be telling you another thing. Social media tells you a whole different story. And so what we want to really focus on today is what is success? What does God consider success? What
Yeah.
does he want out of us? And that's not productivity. It's not checking off 50,000 things off of your to-do list. It's our faithfulness. And so that's what I really want to be able to focus on is defining success in our faithfulness of what the Lord would have us do in any given day. And take time to think through that. And we'll kind of go through defining success and knowing that ahead of time.
Yeah.
Knowing where you want to kind of be at the end of the day when you lay your head down at the pillow.
Yeah.
What defines success? And it truly is, it's about our faithfulness to what God would have us do. And it's really important to define that before the day starts or before the week starts or the month starts or the year starts. We don't define it, the world will. Somebody
Yeah.
will define that for us.
Well, and I guess that's where kind of like I should not have been surprised, but obviously defining success first would have been probably my number one. But I noticed that your number two thing on your outline pretty much answers the question, who gets first place? And as the pastor's wife, I would have expected you to go here, but it's very interesting that your number two thing says, put God first in your outline, not just somewhere. What do you mean by that? And what does that really look like in your pretty much CFO hat, mom hat, wife hat, every hat that you wear?
Yeah, so if we know that success isn't just doing more, but it's doing what matters most, what would God have us do? Then how do we organize our day? And that begins with waking up and focusing on God. And that is our order, it determines our outcomes. And so if we start the day with the Lord, if we start the day with an attitude of prayer, and our attitude of seeking wisdom, that's going to matter, starting in the Bible, starting in prayer, seeking alignment before we even put our feet on the ground. Whether we're doing that in the morning, whether we're doing that the day before, like looking ahead at what our day looks like, seeking that wisdom and that clarity, and then leaving room in our day for God opportunities. Simple pieces there is going to the Word before going to work and prayer before planning. I work at One More Child, faith-based organization. I'm very blessed to be in an organization where prayer is so important to what we do. I'm on a strategic leadership team where we pray together to seek God's counsel and seek His wisdom in our direction. So word before work and prayer before planning, I think, is critical. We talked about in our last episode of the manna prayer. God has created today
Yeah.
for us, and He's given us everything that we need to be able to get through the day. I know that it doesn't feel like it all the time, but leaving room for those God moments to be able to happen.
Yeah. And so I think one of the biggest things about that is sounds good in theory, but in practice is that when you wake up in the morning, you know there are already emails in your inbox. And you know that probably one of your children has texted in the middle of the night. And so when you wake up, there's already stuff waiting for you to look at. So I guess what you're saying is before you go there, go to God first. And if you can, that's kind of the mindset that you want to have when you wake up in the morning.
Yeah, absolutely. I sleep with my phone next to my head. It's at the dresser,
Yeah.
and but I purposefully turn that off because we get notifications
Yeah.
24/7. And our rest is important. When you grab for your phone, what's the first thing that you're looking at? And check yourself. Throughout the day, I'll grab my phone and, I'm like, "Oh, let me just play a little solitaire or some backgammon or, something." I'm like, "Is that really the best use of my time?" I've got my Bible app
Yeah.
right there too. And so a lot, I check sometimes and I'm just like,
Yeah.
"No, I can be spending this time in the word."
Well, even though you're the organized one, let me give you a piece of organized advice.
Please.
Maybe at 5 a.m. when the first alarm goes off, that's
Oh,
the
no,
one
no,
you
we're not
should get.
going there.
That's the one you should get up on, not like the 10th one that goes off, because I am not ready to get up at 5 a.m.
Okay, well, I'm not ready to get up at 5 a.m. either.
There
And
you
I
go.
think that's part of the problem. I am not a morning person.
I am
Let's be
not
clear, I'm not a morning person. I'm not a late night person either. My sweet spot's middle of the
10 to 2.
day. That's right.
10 to 2. Once we've dealt with that, so God is first, we get that. So now you've dealt with the majors,
Mhm.
that, but now where does your energy go, or how do you decide where your energy goes next? Because I know for me, once I get up and I'm going, there are a lot of things that are already waiting for me to do.
And this is not me saying, okay, check God off, for the day and now move on to everything else that matters. Because that's certainly not what I'm trying to say here. Now, don't get me wrong, I am definitely a checklist person. I love lists. I love Excel. I love organizing. I love all those things. And I'm to the point where even if something is not on my list that I do during the day, I will write it on my list just for the satisfaction of being able to cross it off. That's just how much I love
Yeah,
lists. What we want to look at now is, well, how do we prioritize the rest of the things that need to get done during the day, or all the things that need to get done during the day? And really, how do we focus on what matters most? Not everything that's presented to you during a day is what matters most. Now there'll be things that come up that is an emergency to somebody else
yeah,
that is doesn't necessarily mean it's your highest priority. But you have to be able to prioritize and look at what matters most. What did I decide in the morning?
yeah,
What was most important for today? And what I like to do is kind of look at, okay, what are three things that if I accomplish today, this was a successful day? And so that kind of goes back to defining your success. But looking at, what are three things that if I can get this done today, that's going to be a win.
yeah,
And spending time and carving out time to be able to do those things. Um, I lead a team at my work, and every day we've got a Teams chat that is, okay, what matters most today? And so
yeah,
give me your bullet points of what are the things that you think you should be working on, that's your highest priority to be working on. And as a leader, I review that every day, and I may help prioritize that for them. But in our own lives, we need to be looking at that, and we need to be looking for the Lord as far as what that priority
yeah,
is. Try to every day, what are the things that matter most, and then focus on that. And again, like I said, I'm a checklist kind of person. It may be easier for me to get down 10 things that were super fast to
yeah,
get done, but those aren't necessarily the things that matter most. And typically what's going to happen if I'm working on all these little tidbitty things, I'm going to get distracted and get pulled off onto something else.
yeah,
And so what I really try to do is think through what are the things that I've got to get done today, and block that time to be able to get those things done. choosing those priorities, what is most important to do, and then do that important work first. Doesn't necessarily mean it's most urgent. There's someone at my work who every email I get, it has that red exclamation point on it, and it says it's really important. And again, just because it's an emergency for somebody else doesn't necessarily mean it's what's most important for you to get done. Now we all have that servant's attitude, or hopefully many of us have that servant's attitude, and we want to be able to please people. But again, setting those priorities, defining, early in the day
Yeah.
what matters most, and finding those times and carve out those times to get those things done, I think is just really important.
The way I talk about it in my life, if everything is important, nothing is important.
Absolutely.
But I'm going to throw you a curveball before we get to the next thing, because I have heard you say this, and I know you and our director and video editor and pretty much everything else, Steve Ullum, both, who usually is in here with us when we're doing this. Y'all both work in the corporate world, which I don't know anything about, and if I even pretended to walk in it for a day, I think it'd be a pretty good laugh for everybody. And so I understand that your world does revolve around lists and job descriptions. But what I hear sometimes you saying to people when you're coming, maybe ending a meeting or stuff, is I need to be better at checking in. If God is first, how do you balance? Because I hear you say it sometimes, I need to do better checking in spiritually with how my team's doing,
Hmm.
or how's your family going, and the flip side of that is you got your top three things to do, and somebody in your office comes in crying, and all of a sudden your whole day, how do you balance that? And I, again, sorry for the curveball of it,
No, I love it.
but it's the pastoral question, because my problem is if I have three things, it doesn't matter, because the sooner I get the phone call, my whole day goes to. So mine is always
Hmm.
the church people. So how do you put pastoral or all of that in your organizational chart?
Yeah, I think that goes back to what defines success, and being faithful in what the Lord would have you do helps define that success. So maybe that interruption is exactly what God would have you do at that time. Praying for wisdom
Yeah,
in the morning, at the start of the day, at the start of your meetings, at the start of everything that you do, is asking for wisdom and leaving yourself open. Just because, you ask for wisdom, it doesn't stop there. You have to
yeah,
be ready to listen for those opportunities and listen for those things, because just because what you feel like may have been what was most important, that can change. That can
yeah.
change at any point. And so being open and willing and flexible, willing to pivot, allowing yourself that freedom to be able to do that. I'm very much an introvert. I can function, around people, but it's very draining. That's not my top priority. When I get to the work, I like to, sit at my desk and close my door and be there. And for, however many hours it is, I can go all day. And, I have other team members who are very social, and
Yeah.
so I do work hard to be able to try to go to a lunch periodically, or, just check in and see how somebody's doing. And that does open up those opportunities and those conversations. And again, I'm very blessed to work in a faith-based organization where
Yeah.
where we share common faith, and um, we look for opportunities to be able to pray for each other. So, but again, I think you plan your day, but at the same time, you have to leave yourself that room for those types of God moments, because God brought that person
Yeah.
to you, and you just have to be able to be willing to recognize that and be willing to um, move around your schedule.
Yeah, and you wrote something in your outline that I really think it's a good transition point, is we can't confuse the urgent with what's loudest. And I
Right.
think a lot of times people think if I just talk louder than everybody else, that's going to the squeaky wheel gets the grease. We can't operate in that arena, or we'll never accomplish the things that we value as priority, or our organization values as priority.
Right. And I think that's where that wisdom comes in, asking for wisdom, because it as people pleasers, you are going to focus your attention on quieting the disruptions and
Yeah.
things like that. But at the same time, you may be doing harm because you're allowing that interruption to take the place of something else that was more important.
Yeah.
But then also that interruption could be solved by somebody else, and somebody else
Yeah.
could have gotten that win, or that person themselves.
So we'll transition to number four, ending the day well. And the question I have here is kind of because I know how we start a day and I know how we end our day, and we end our day with prayer. But how do you close the day so that when you get to bed, you're not just like collapsing because I'm just absolutely worn out from my day? Is there a way where we can organize our day that when we go to bed, we feel like, okay, that was a good day, without just feeling like at the end of every day, I have no energy left and I'm so ready to collapse?
Part of that is, closure brings peace. If you can take a few moments at the end of your day, reflect back on your day, what were you able to accomplish? What of your big three priorities, or what mattered most? What were you able to accomplish or make at least significant progress on? Celebrate those wins. Um, but at the same time, give yourself grace for those things that didn't get finished. Because again, going back to last week's episode with the manna prayer, God had a plan for you today. And God gave you everything that you needed to get done for today. And it may not have been His will for everything to have gotten
Yeah.
done, and be able to rest in that peace, rest in that knowledge that He is in control. And despite our best planning efforts, we're not. And so be okay with that. Go back to where we started. What defined success? And being faithful. Were you faithful? Were you faithful in what God presented you with today? Truly evaluate that. And the answer is not always going to be yes. But at least we're taking that time to reflect back. We can learn on how to do it better the next day, because we have tomorrow,
Yeah.
and tomorrow's there waiting for us, God willing. Thank Him for giving you the strength to get through the day. He has provided that, but thank Him for those opportunities. Think through your day, and, despite what was planned, where did God show up that maybe you didn't expect, or that you can now look back and say, now I understand. And I want to kind of just, end with, these three questions to ask yourself, just three easy questions. Is number one, where did I see God today? Think through that, rejoice in that, rest in that, because He was there.
Yeah.
If we're looking for Him, He showed up.
Yeah.
Then number two, what went well? Take the time to celebrate those things that went well. And then number three, what can I entrust to God for tomorrow? And be able to rest in that. There's a lot of anxiety in the world. This reflection at the end of the day is not meant for you to be, oh goodness, now I've got to like worry about tomorrow, and what I didn't get done today. This is not what this is meant to be. This is meant for us to be able to give it to God, to give it to the
Uh,
Lord, and be able to rest well, knowing that He has given you exactly what you needed for today, and He'll do the exact same thing tomorrow.
and you keep saying something which makes me realize, that we do need to go back and do a follow up on the manna prayer, because last time we did our podcast, and that hasn't gone out yet, um, you, I had just introduced the manna prayer to
Mhm.
you, but obviously based on the last 7 days of our life, we're in a whole different place with what we've seen God do through that prayer.
Yeah.
So we probably need to bring that back. But I want to one commend you, and then one, two, I want to kind of say something kind of prideful. I want to commend you in that, being somebody who's organized. Today, I know you took the time out of like the middle of your day, which is kind of in that 10 to 2 range where you're really trying to hit stuff, to come be with me, to meet somebody who really needed to spend some time with us, um, to receive affirmation as a church member that only the pastor and the pastor's wife could have given. And that person needed all of our time. And we had a podcast coming up, and I know you had a lot of things to do. But I just want you to hear you say from my pastor's heart is I feel very much that you were in that moment, and that that person left feeling like, Kim, the pastor's wife, gave me full attention. And so that's the first thing to commend you. But the kind of proud moment is this is for those of us who are not organized, that when our organized other sends us a calendar invite on our phone, they're thinking that we should click on yes, no, or maybe. We think that the calendar invite is just there to tell us something, but I'm doing much better at replying to my wife's calendar invites so that things can officially go on our calendar that I have responded yes, no, or maybe. And so I feel like I'm helping you be more organized, which helps me be more organized. And now my calendar has stuff on it that maybe it didn't have before. So I think that's a good way to kind of wrap up,
It's a
other
good
than,
practical tool right there.
yeah. So wrap it up with giving us kind of like one final statement that we can take away from this.
My closing statement to you is that you don't have to have a perfect schedule to have a perfect day. What you need to have is the right priorities in the right order. And those priorities are determined by following in our faithfulness to God. I think that's my closing thought is, our calendars, our to-do lists, all of our technology, all those things are tools, but it cannot replace our
Yeah.
conversations with the Lord.
Yeah.
And when we spend the time and we start our day and we spend our time throughout the day and we end our day focused on the Lord, trying to be as faithful as we can, that being our goal, that defining our success is to be faithful
Yeah.
to what the Lord would have us do, being right in the smack dab middle of His will. That's the success.
I think I'll wrap us up tonight by saying, kind of my takeaway from this is that we all say tomorrow needs more hours.
Mm.
Maybe what tomorrow doesn't need is more hours, but priorities that are more clear for us and how we need to live our lives. So tomorrow needs better priorities, and for all of us, maybe some help for someone who is more organized than we are to help us with our day. So that is the end of our organized podcast. I hope you guys had a great time listening or watching, and we'll see you on the next episode. Next time, we're going to continue the conversation about organization, and we're going to talk about the dangers of when discussing things like organization and structure can lead us into the dangerous area of spiritual drift.